Augustus Parker, 27, never expected a Sunday dinner to change his life forever. When I introduced my girlfriend to my parents, my father's dismissive words cut deeper than any knife. "She's a doctor, and you're just a Target cashier." 4 years of silence followed that moment. Tonight, as I park my Tesla outside their modest home, I check my portfolio one last time: 5 properties and ownership of their retirement fund. They have no idea who's coming to dinner. Before I continue, where are you watching from? Drop a like and subscribe if you've ever proven someone wrong who underestimated you. Growing up in Evergreen Heights, a middle-class suburban neighborhood just outside Minneapolis, I never felt like I quite measured up to my parents' expectations. My father, Robert Parker, worked as an accountant at a prestigious firm downtown. He wore crisp suits, carried a leather briefcase, and spoke in terms of financial stability and career advancement. My mother, Diana, taught English at the local high school, where she was known for her strict grading and high standards. Both valued education, professional success, and social status above all else. From my earliest memories, our dinner conversations revolved around academic achievements and career milestones. "Augustus, did you finish that extra credit assignment, or have you thought about which college will best position you for medical school?" They mapped out my entire life before I'd even started high school. My older sister, Amelia, thrived under this pressure. She was naturally studious, disciplined, and ambitious. By the time I was in middle school, she was already graduating with honors from Northwestern University and heading to law school. She became the golden child, the standard against which I was constantly measured and found wanting. It wasn't that I didn't try. I did well enough in school, mostly B's with some, as in subjects that interested me, but my strengths lay elsewhere. In connecting with people, understanding their needs, making them feel valued. I had a natural talent for diffusing tension with humor, for making friends across different social groups, for seeing possibilities where others saw problems. "Those aren't marketable skills, Augustus," my father would say whenever I mentioned my interest in entrepreneurship or sales. "You can't build a stable future on being likable." My mother would add, "We just want you to have options, honey. Good grades lead to good colleges, lead to good careers." I chose State University partly because it was affordable and partly because it offered a business program with an entrepreneurship track. This decision was met with thinly veiled disappointment. "State University is fine," my mother said, "but with your SAT scores you could have aimed higher." To help pay for college expenses, I took a job at Target. I started as a cashier, working evenings and weekends while taking classes during the day. I genuinely enjoyed the work, the rhythm of scanning items, the brief but meaningful interactions with customers, the satisfaction of solving problems efficiently. Within 6 months, I was recognized as Employee of the Month. My managers appreciated my reliability and positive attitude. Regular customers would wait in longer lines just to chat with me for a few minutes. I took pride in remembering their names, asking about their families, recommending products based on their previous purchases. "It's just a retail job," my father would dismiss whenever I shared these small victories. "A stepping stone, not a destination." But to me, it was more than that. It was real-world experience in understanding what people wanted, in providing service that went beyond transactions. I was learning things no textbook could teach me. I met Sophia during a busy holiday shift in December. The store was packed with last-minute shoppers. Tensions were high, and most customers were rushing through their purchases with minimal conversation. Sophia stood out immediately, a young woman with warm brown eyes and a patient smile, buying supplies for a children's hospital holiday party. Having trouble finding the child-safe scissors, I asked, noticing her frustrated expression as she approached my register. "Yes, I've been all over the store," she admitted. "We need 20 pairs for a craft project tomorrow." I called over to Miguel, a coworker who had just finished restocking that section. "Can you grab a box of the safety scissors from the back, the blue ones with the rounded tips?" When Miguel returned with the scissors, Sophia's relief was palpable. "You just saved our holiday party. 20 kids would have been very disappointed tomorrow." "Happy to help," I said, genuinely meaning it. "You work at the children's hospital." "I'm a pediatric resident there," she explained, her eyes lighting up. "First year. It's exhausting but wonderful." Our conversation continued as I scanned her items. There was an ease between us, a natural flow that made me bold enough to write my number on her receipt. "In case you need emergency craft supplies in the future," I said with a smile. To my surprise, she texted me that same night. Our first date was coffee the following week. Our second was dinner at a small Italian restaurant. By our third date, I knew Sophia was special, not because of her impressive career, but because of how she saw the world, how she treated people, how she listened when I talked about my dreams of someday running my own business. "You'd be great at that," she said without a hint of condescension. "You understand what people need before they even know it themselves." For 6 months, we built our relationship on mutual respect and genuine affection. Sophia never once made me feel lesser because I worked retail while finishing my business degree. If anything, she admired my work ethic and people skills. "I wish some of my colleagues had your emotional intelligence," she told me once. "Medicine isn't just about knowledge. It's about connecting with patients, making them feel heard." When Sophia suggested meeting my family, I hesitated. I had told her about their fixation on prestigious careers, their dismissal of my job at Target. But she insisted. "I want to know where you come from," she said. "Besides, maybe they'll see you differently through my eyes." I wanted to believe she was right. I wanted to believe my parents could see past job titles to the person I was becoming. With hope and nervousness intertwined, I scheduled a Sunday dinner that would change everything. The day of the dinner arrived with perfect spring weather that belied the storm brewing inside me. I changed outfits 3 times before settling on a button-down shirt and khakis. Not too casual, not trying too hard. Sophia wore a simple blue dress that somehow made her look both professional and approachable. "You look beautiful," I told her. As we drove to my parents' house, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. "And you look like you're heading to your own execution," she replied, placing her hand over mine. "Relax. I'll charm them, you'll see." I parked in the driveway of the colonial-style house where I'd grown up. "Just prepare yourself," I warned. "They can be judgmental without realizing it." My mother opened the door before we could ring the bell. "Augustus," she exclaimed, pulling me into a stiff hug before turning her analytical gaze to Sophia. "And you must be the doctor we've heard so little about." "Sophia Rodriguez," my girlfriend replied with a warm smile, extending her hand. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Parker." "Diana, please." My mother corrected her posture, relaxing slightly at Sophia's polished manner. My father appeared in the hallway, his assessing gaze moving between us. "Robert Parker," he introduced himself, shaking Sophia's hand firmly. "Come in, dinner's almost ready." To my surprise, the initial conversation flowed smoothly. My parents asked Sophia about her medical training, her specialty, her plans for the future. She answered graciously, while repeatedly trying to include me in the conversation. "Augustus has been so supportive during my insane residency schedule," she said. "Not many people would understand the demands." My mother nodded approvingly. "Education has always been important in our family. Amelia, Augustus's sister, is an attorney with Hendricks and Walsh now. Corporate law," my father added proudly. "Made junior partner last year." "That's impressive," Sophia acknowledged. Augustus mentioned she was very successful. The tension I'd been carrying began to ease as we moved to the dining room. My mother had prepared her signature roast beef with all the trimmings, clearly trying to impress. The conversation continued pleasantly through the appetizer and main course, though I noticed my contributions were often overlooked or redirected. It wasn't until dessert that the facade began to crack. My mother served her apple pie while asking, "So, Augustus, are you still at the store?" The slight pause before store carried volumes of disappointment. "Yes," I answered, straightening my shoulders. "Actually, I'm being considered for an assistant manager position after graduation next month." "Retail management," my father said flatly. "Is that the plan now?" "For the moment," I replied. "But I've been developing ideas for my own business. I've identified a gap in the market for personalized customer service in the home organization industry." My father's eyebrows rose. "Sounds risky. Startups have an extremely high failure rate." "Augustus has amazing insights into what customers want," Sophia interjected. "He notices patterns and preferences that others miss. His managers at Target have already implemented several of his suggestions for improving customer flow." My father's expression darkened. Rearranging checkout lines is hardly preparation for running a business. The real world requires capital business plans, financial projections. I'm working on those too, I said, feeling my confidence waver under his dismissive gaze. My business professor thinks my concept has real potential. Professors, my father scoffed. Most have never run a successful business in their lives. My mother, sensing rising tension, attempted to change the subject. Sophia, tell us more about your plans after residency. Will you join an established practice? Actually, Sophia began, I'm interested in community medicine, possibly opening a clinic in an underserved area someday. Augustus and I have talked about how our skills might complement each other, his business acumen and my medical knowledge. The silence that followed was deafening. My father set down his fork with deliberate slowness. You're planning a future together, he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. We're discussing possibilities, I answered carefully. I see. My father looked between us, his gaze calculating. And what exactly do you bring to this partnership? Augustus, Sophia will be a doctor. She'll have stability, respect, a substantial income. Robert, my mother, cautioned. But he continued his words, gaining momentum like a boulder rolling downhill. I'm just being realistic. Relationships need balance. What can you offer someone of her caliber? Financial security, social standing. Dad, that's not how relationships work. I protested, feeling heat rise in my face. In the real world, it absolutely is, he insisted. Disparities in education and income are leading causes of divorce. Augustus offers plenty, Sophia said firmly. He's intelligent, hard-working, creative. He sees solutions where others see problems. His emotional intelligence is off the charts. My father's laugh was short and cutting. Emotional intelligence doesn't pay mortgages. Robert, please, my mother tried again. But something had broken loose in my father. Years of disappointment came pouring out in a torrent of judgment. She's a doctor and you're just a target, Cashier, he spat, the words hitting me like physical blows. What could you possibly offer someone like her? She'll be supporting you while you chase pipe dreams about businesses that will never materialize. Is that your plan, to ride on her success? The room went silent. My sister Amelia, who had been quiet throughout most of the exchange, stared at her plate. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Sophia sat perfectly still, her face flushed with anger. I felt something crack inside me, not my heart or my confidence, but the invisible chain of approval I'd been seeking my entire life. I think we should go, I said quietly, standing up. Augustus, your father didn't mean. My mother began weakly. Yes, he did, I replied. He's been meaning it for years. Sophia stood beside me, her hand finding mine and squeezing tightly. Thank you for dinner, she said with remarkable composure. But I think it's best if we leave now. As we walked toward the door, my father called after us. You know I'm right, Augustus. You're setting yourself up for failure. I turned back one last time. No, Dad. You've got it backwards. You've been setting me up for failure my entire life by never believing in me. That ends tonight. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, focusing on the road to keep from breaking down. Finally, Sophia spoke. Your father is wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Is he? I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. On paper, he's right. You're going to be a doctor. I'm a cashier with big dreams and no proof I can achieve them. Sophia turned in her seat to face me. Augustus Parker, look at me. At the next red light I did. Your worth isn't determined by your job title or your bank account, she said fiercely. You are smart, resourceful, and determined. You see possibilities where others see limitations. Those aren't just nice qualities. They're the foundation of success. The light turned green. I drove on, her words penetrating the armor of shame my father had reinforced for years. You know what I see when I look at you, Sophia continued. I see someone who will succeed not despite starting at the bottom, but because of it. You understand what real people want and need. That's worth more than any degree or pedigree. By the time we reached her apartment, a decision had crystallized in my mind. The humiliation of that dinner would be the last time my father's opinion defined my self-worth. I would prove him wrong not with words, but with actions. I'm done, I said as I walked Sophia to her door. Done trying to earn their approval. done measuring myself by their standards. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to build something on my own terms," I replied. "And I'm going to start by cutting contact until they can see me for who I am, not who they think I should be." Sophia searched my face. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "No," I admitted. "What I want is parents who believe in me. But since I can't have that, I'll settle for proving them wrong instead." The decision to cut contact with my parents wasn't made lightly, nor was it executed in anger. The morning after the disastrous dinner, I sent a simple text to both of them. "I need time and space to pursue my own path without your judgment. Please respect my decision not to be in contact for a while." My phone buzzed almost immediately with my mother's response. "You're overreacting, Augustus. Your father was just concerned about your future." My father's message came an hour later. "When you're ready to have a mature conversation about realistic career goals, we'll be here." Neither message contained what I needed most: an apology, an acknowledgement that their words had been hurtful and unfair. So I didn't respond. Over the next few weeks, the messages continued. My mother sent tentative olive branches. "I made your favorite lasagna tonight," and "The dogwoods you planted in the backyard are blooming beautifully." My father took a different approach. "This silent treatment is childish, and you're only hurting yourself with this stubborn pride." I read each message but maintained my silence. It wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about creating the space I needed to grow without the constant shadow of their disapproval. Sophia supported my decision but worried about the long-term implications. "Family is complicated," she said one evening as we sat on her tiny balcony watching the sunset. "You can distance yourself without cutting them off completely." "I'm not saying it's forever," I explained. "Just until I can face them as an equal, not as their disappointing son." "You were never disappointing," she insisted. "They just couldn't see your value." That conversation sparked something in Sophia. The following weekend, she invited me to brunch with her mentor, Dr. Marcus Chen, a pediatric surgeon who had taken Sophia under his wing at the hospital. Dr. Chen turned out to be nothing like I expected. Instead of the stern academic type, he was relaxed and approachable in jeans and a casual button-down shirt. After some pleasant small talk, he leaned forward with interest. "Sophia tells me you have entrepreneurial aspirations," he said, stirring his coffee. "What field interests you?" Cautiously, I outlined my ideas about personalized home organization services. To my surprise, he nodded with genuine interest, asking insightful questions about target demographics and scaling potential. "You've given this serious thought," he observed. "But if I may offer another perspective, have you considered real estate?" "Not really," I admitted. "It seems like you need significant capital to get started." Dr. Chen smiled. "Not necessarily. I bought my first property when I was a broke medical student, a rundown duplex that the bank was practically giving away, lived in one half, rented the other. That single decision changed my financial trajectory more than my medical degree." Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Chen shared his journey from that first duplex to a portfolio of over 20 properties. He explained concepts like leverage, cash flow appreciation, and tax advantages in clear, accessible terms. "The beauty of real estate," he said, "is that your tenants pay down your mortgage while your properties appreciate. It's one of the few investments where you can use other people's money to build your wealth." By the time we left the restaurant, my mind was buzzing with possibilities. Dr. Chen handed me his card with his personal number written on the back. "Call me if you have questions," he offered. "I'm always happy to help someone who sees the potential in themselves that others might miss." That night I couldn't sleep. I spent hours researching real estate investing, watching tutorials, reading articles. By morning I had a new direction and the beginnings of a plan. Over the next few months, I immersed myself in learning everything I could about real estate, while continuing to work at Target. I enrolled in online courses about property investment, business planning, and financial management. I attended free workshops at the local Real Estate Investment Association. I listened to podcasts during my commute and read books during my lunch breaks. Dr. Chen proved to be an invaluable mentor, meeting with me monthly to review my progress and answer questions. "Knowledge without action is useless," he reminded me. "Start small, but start." At Target, I requested additional responsibilities and made it clear to management that I was interested in advancing. My hard work paid off when I was promoted to department supervisor, which came with a modest raise. It wasn't much, but every extra dollar went into my investment fund. I cut expenses ruthlessly. I moved from my one-bedroom apartment to a shared house with 3 roommates, slashing my rent by 60%. I sold my car and bought a 10-year-old Honda with high mileage but good reliability. I learned to cook instead of ordering takeout. I canceled subscriptions, found free entertainment, and embraced a minimalist lifestyle. None of this felt like sacrifice, because every decision brought me closer to my goal. Sophia supported my frugality, often suggesting free date ideas like hiking in state parks or attending community events. During this time, the messages from my parents grew less frequent but more pointed. "Your sister just closed on a beautiful house in Edina," my mother wrote. "The firm is really rewarding her hard work." My father's messages became increasingly formal. "Your mother and I are updating our will. Please provide your current address for legal purposes." My sister Amelia called occasionally. Unlike my parents, she seemed to respect my boundaries, never pushing me to reconnect before I was ready. During one call, she hesitantly mentioned our father. "He asks about you, you know," she said, in his own way. "Has he ever said he was wrong?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. "That's what I thought," I said, changing the subject. The holidays were the hardest. Thanksgiving, Christmas, my birthday. Each celebration highlighted the family-shaped hole in my life. Sophia invited me to join her large, boisterous family gatherings, which helped ease the loneliness. Her parents welcomed me warmly, never once asking about my job or income, only whether I was happy and treating their daughter well. The contrast between her family and mine couldn't have been starker. In their modest home filled with laughter and acceptance, I glimpsed what family could and should be. By the end of my first year of silence, I had saved almost $20,000 through aggressive saving and picking up weekend gig work. It wasn't enough to buy property in the city, but Dr. Chen connected me with a mortgage broker who specialized in working with first-time investors. "Investment properties are different from primary residences," the broker explained, "but there are programs for owner-occupants buying multifamily units. You could live in one unit and rent out the others." With Dr. Chen's guidance, I began hunting for my first property, not a fancy condo or a status symbol, but a solid investment that would generate passive income. The hunt took months of visiting rundown properties, researching neighborhoods, and analyzing potential returns. Meanwhile, life continued. Sophia completed another year of her residency. Our relationship deepened, despite the pressures of her demanding schedule and my single-minded focus on building financial independence. We supported each other's dreams without competition or comparison, a partnership model so different from what I'd observed between my parents. The silence between my family and me stretched on, but I was no longer the same person who had walked out of that Sunday dinner. With each passing month, with each small victory, I was becoming someone new, someone who defined success on his own terms. 13 months after cutting contact with my parents, I closed on my first property, a rundown duplex in a transitional neighborhood just outside the city center. The building was structurally sound but cosmetically distressed, with peeling paint, outdated fixtures, and overgrown landscaping. Most buyers wanted move-in-ready homes, which meant this diamond in the rough came at a significant discount. "Congratulations, property owner," Sophia said, handing me a bottle of champagne as we stood on the cracked walkway of my new investment. I looked up at the shabby exterior and felt a surge of pride more powerful than anything I'd experienced before. "It's not much to look at yet. Neither is a patient when they first come into the ER," she replied with a smile. "But with the right care, amazing transformations happen." The duplex needed substantial cosmetic updates before I could rent out one side while living in the other. I had budgeted for professional contractors, but quickly realized my money would stretch further if I handled some renovations myself. YouTube became my instructor for basic home improvement skills. I learned to patch drywall, install vinyl flooring, and paint like a pro. For more complex tasks like plumbing and electrical work, I hired professionals but negotiated discounts by doing the prep work myself and cleaning up afterward. Weekdays, I worked at Target evenings. I attended business classes, and weekends I devoted to property renovation. It was exhausting but exhilarating. Each improvement, no matter how small, was tangible progress toward my goals. 3 months later, I moved into the smaller unit and listed the larger one for rent. The response was overwhelming, 17 applications in the first week. I carefully selected tenants with stable income and good references, a young couple who both worked in education and appreciated the renovated space and reasonable rent. The day they moved in and handed me their first rent check was surreal. I had created value where others had seen only problems, and now that vision was generating income. The monthly rent covered about 70% of my mortgage payment, which meant I was living for a fraction of what I had paid for my previous one-bedroom apartment. My promotion to assistant manager at Target came through around the same time, bringing another modest increase in income. Every extra dollar went into my investment fund for property number 2. Sophia completed her second year of residency and moved to a rotation in pediatric emergency medicine, which she loved despite the grueling hours. We stole moments together whenever our schedules aligned, often meeting for late-night dinners or early morning coffees. "You look different," she observed one morning as we shared breakfast on my small patio. "More confident." "I feel different," I admitted. "For the first time, I'm building something that's completely mine. No one can take it away or diminish it." "Your parents would be proud if they could see what you're accomplishing," she suggested gently. I shook my head. "Maybe someday, but I'm not doing this for their approval anymore." As my first tenants settled in and my renovation skills improved, I began looking for my second property. This time I had specific criteria: a distressed property with good bones, in an area with strong rental demand and appreciation potential. Dr. Chen introduced me to his network of real estate investors, who welcomed me with surprising openness. "Most people think real estate is competitive," he explained, "but successful investors know that collaboration creates more opportunities for everyone." Through this network, I learned about a foreclosure property before it hit the public market, a small 4-unit building being sold by a bank eager to get it off their books. The location was excellent near a growing commercial district, but the building needed substantial work. Using the equity in my first property as collateral, I secured financing for this larger investment. The numbers were tight, and the renovation would be more extensive than my duplex, but the potential returns were significant. This time I hired a contractor for the major structural work, but continued handling cosmetic updates myself. I developed relationships with suppliers, learning to negotiate better prices on materials. I studied landlord-tenant laws and created systems for screening applicants, handling maintenance requests, and tracking expenses for tax purposes. Within 6 months, all 4 units were renovated and rented to carefully selected tenants. The combined rental income not only covered the mortgage but generated positive cash flow each month. To money I immediately set aside for my next investment. My sister Amelia called during this period, her voice tentative. "I drive by your duplex sometimes," she admitted. "It looks amazing compared to when you bought it." "You know where I live?" I asked, surprised. "Mom and Dad don't," she quickly clarified. "But I looked up the property records after you mentioned buying a place. I hope that's okay." It was strangely touching that she had taken an interest. "It's fine. I'm not hiding, Amelia. I'm just establishing boundaries." "I understand," she said. "For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is impressive, building something on your own terms." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely moved by her support. "That means a lot." "They ask about you," she added after a pause. "Mom and Dad. They'd never admit it, but I think they miss you." "Do they ever acknowledge they were wrong?" I asked the same question I always asked. Her hesitation told me nothing had changed. "They're from a different generation, Augustus. Success looks a certain way to them." "And it looks different to me," I replied simply. By the 18-month mark of my silence, my real estate portfolio had grown to 2 properties with 5 rental units total. I was still working at Target, but increasingly my income from real estate was outpacing my paycheck. I began to consider the possibility of leaving retail to focus on property investment full-time. Sophia and I celebrated our 2-year anniversary with a weekend trip to a lakeside cabin. Under a starlit sky surrounded by the peaceful sounds of nature, we talked about our future. "I'm thinking about quitting Target," I confessed. My properties are generating enough income to cover my expenses, and I could grow faster if I had more time to find deals and manage renovations. I think you should, she said without hesitation. You've proven you can succeed in real estate. Why not go all in? It's a big step, I admitted. No safety net, no regular paycheck. Sophia took my hand. Sometimes the most important steps are the scary ones. Besides, you've created your own safety net with these properties. That night, as Sophia slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about how far I'd come from that humiliating dinner. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving on my own terms. And for the first time I began to consider what reconciliation with my parents might look like, not from a place of need, but from a position of strength and self-assurance. 2 years after walking out of my parents' house, I submitted my resignation to Target. My manager, who had watched my progression from cashier to assistant manager, wasn't entirely surprised. "I've always had a feeling you were destined for something different," she said during our exit interview. "Most people who talk about their side hustles never actually make the leap. You did." Leaving the security of a regular paycheck was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. The morning after my final shift, I woke up with no alarm, no schedule, and complete ownership of my time, for the first time in my adult life. "So this is what freedom feels like," I said to myself, standing on the small balcony of my duplex unit with a cup of coffee, watching the neighborhood come to life. With my newfound time, I immersed myself completely in growing my real estate business. I developed a systematic approach to finding undervalued properties using data analysis and market research rather than just intuition. I created spreadsheets to track potential deals, calculating cash flow projections, renovation budgets, and return on investment for each opportunity. Dr. Chen continued to mentor me, but our relationship evolved into more of a partnership as I gained experience. "You have a natural talent for this business," he told me, after I shared my analysis of a potential investment. "You see value where others don't, just like in medicine we sometimes see symptoms others miss." Within 3 months of leaving Target, I acquired my third property, a small commercial building with a long-term tenant on the ground floor and 2 residential apartments above. The previous owner was retiring and wanted a quick, hassle-free sale. Because I could close quickly with financing already in place, I negotiated a purchase price 15% below market value. This property was different from my previous investments: less hands-on renovation, more complex lease agreements, and regulatory requirements. I hired an attorney specializing in commercial real estate to review all contracts and advise me on zoning laws and building codes. The upfront professional fees seemed expensive, but they protected me from potentially costly mistakes. As my portfolio grew, so did the complexity of managing it. I realized I couldn't handle everything myself if I wanted to continue scaling. I began building a team of reliable professionals: a property manager to handle tenant communications and routine maintenance, a bookkeeper to track income and expenses, a handyman for minor repairs, and trusted contractors for larger-end renovations. "The secret to growing wealth isn't doing everything yourself," Dr. Chen advised. "It's creating systems that work without your constant attention." Following his guidance, I documented processes for everything from tenant screening to maintenance requests to financial reporting. These systems allowed me to focus on the highest value activities, finding new investment opportunities, and strategic decision-making. My fourth property came through an unexpected source. One of my tenants mentioned that their elderly neighbor was moving to assisted living and needed to sell her triplex quickly. Because I could offer a fair price without the delays of traditional financing, we closed within 2 weeks. This property required minimal renovations and was fully rented within a month, immediately adding to my monthly cash flow. Throughout this period of rapid growth, Sophia remained my constant support and sounding board. She completed her residency and accepted a position as a pediatrician at a community health center serving low-income families. Not the highest-paying option, but the one that aligned with her values. "I'm proud of you," I told her at the small dinner party we hosted to celebrate her new position. "You chose meaning over money." "So did you," she replied. "You could have taken a corporate job to please your parents, but you built something authentic instead." Our relationship had deepened through the challenges we'd both faced. One evening, as we walked along the riverfront after dinner, I stopped at a scenic overlook and dropped to one knee. "Sophia Rodriguez," I said, opening a small velvet box to reveal a vintage sapphire ring we had admired in an antique shop months earlier. "You believed in me when no one else did. You saw my potential when others saw limitations. Will you marry me?" Her joyful yes echoed across the water as she pulled me to my feet and into her arms. As we began planning our future together, I received an unexpected call from my sister Amelia. After congratulating me on my engagement, news had reached her through mutual friends. She hesitantly brought up our parents. "Dad's company is downsizing," she explained. "He's being offered early retirement. The package isn't great and their investments haven't performed well. Mom's worried." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely concerned despite our estrangement. "Are they going to be okay?" "They'll manage," Amelia replied. "But it's made them reflective. Dad especially. I think he regrets some things." "Has he said that?" I asked. "Not in those words," she admitted. "You know how he is." I did know. My father would rather suffer in silence than admit he was wrong. Still, the news troubled me. Despite everything, I didn't want my parents to struggle in their retirement years. After the call, I spent hours researching my parents' investment situation. Through public records and information Amelia reluctantly provided, I discovered they had most of their retirement savings in a poorly performing portfolio managed by Midwest Financial Partners, a mid-sized investment firm with mediocre returns and high fees. A plan began to form in my mind, audacious, possibly crossing ethical lines but potentially beneficial for everyone involved. What if I could gain control of the company managing their retirement? I could improve their investment returns while simultaneously proving my business acumen. I discussed the idea with Sophia, who raised valid concerns about mixing business with family conflicts. "Are you doing this to help them, or to prove something?" she asked. "Both," I admitted. "Is that wrong?" She considered this. "Not necessarily. Just be clear about your motivations, and make sure whatever you do is legally and ethically sound." With that caution in mind, I consulted with a business attorney about the feasibility of acquiring Midwest Financial Partners. To my surprise, the company was actually seeking investors due to cash flow problems. Their outdated business model and failure to adapt to changing market conditions had left them vulnerable. Through a series of careful negotiations and leveraging equity from my existing properties, I formed an investment group with Dr. Chen and two other investors from our network. Together, we created a holding company that acquired a controlling interest in Midwest Financial Partners. The acquisition was completed quietly, with minimal disruption to existing clients. From my parents' perspective, nothing had changed. Their retirement funds remained with the same company managed by the same advisors. But behind the scenes, we implemented significant improvements, reducing fees, diversifying investments, and modernizing operations. As the controlling partner, I now effectively managed my parents' retirement fund without their knowledge. The moral complexity of this situation wasn't lost on me. Was I overstepping boundaries? Possibly. But I was also protecting their financial future while respecting their choice to maintain our estrangement. During this period, I acquired my fifth property, a luxury condominium in a downtown high-rise. Unlike my previous investments, this wasn't primarily for rental income but as a future home for Sophia and me after our wedding. It was the first property I purchased that wasn't solely an investment decision but also a lifestyle choice, a symbol of how far I'd come from the target cashier my father had dismissed. As my business grew more complex, I realized I needed to address the emotional aspects of my journey as well. At Sophia's suggestion, I began working with a therapist to process the anger and resentment I still carried from that fateful dinner and the years of conditional approval that preceded it. "Success is the best revenge," my therapist observed during one session. "But revenge is a hollow motivation for a fulfilled life. What happens after you've proven your father wrong?" It was a profound question that forced me to look beyond the driving force that had propelled me for the past 3 years. Who was I building this life for? What would true healing look like? As my wedding to Sophia approached, these questions took on greater urgency. I wanted our marriage to be built on positive foundations, not reactive ambitions. I wanted any future children we might have to know their grandparents, despite our complicated history. 3 years and 10 months after walking out of my parents' house, I made the decision to end the silence. The timing wasn't random. I wanted to re-establish contact from a position of unquestionable success. With 5 properties, a controlling interest in their investment firm, and a net worth that had already surpassed my father's at his career peak, I no longer needed their validation or approval. I reached out to Amelia to arrange a dinner at our parents' house, the same setting where everything had fallen apart 4 years earlier. The symmetry felt important, a closing of one circle and the beginning of another. "They don't know about your success," Amelia warned during our planning call. "I've respected your privacy." "Good," I replied. "I want to see their genuine reaction." "What are you hoping will happen?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. I'm not looking for apologies or admissions of wrongdoing, though those would be nice. I just want them to see me, really see me, for once. As the date approached, I prepared mentally and emotionally for all possible outcomes. The worst-case scenario would be continued dismissal of my achievements and choices. The best would be genuine recognition and respect. Most likely, reality would fall somewhere in between. The night before the reunion dinner, Sophia held me close in our bed. "Remember," she whispered, "whatever happens tomorrow, it doesn't define you. You've already won by living authentically." I nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. "I know. I'm not the same person who left that dinner 4 years ago." "No," she agreed. "You're stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Don't lose sight of that tomorrow." With those words echoing in my mind, I prepared to face my parents as the man I had become, not the disappointing son they had dismissed, but a successful entrepreneur who had defined success on his own terms. The morning of the reunion dinner dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day much like the one 4 years earlier when everything had fallen apart. I woke early, my mind cycling through possible scenarios for the evening ahead. I made coffee and stood on the balcony of our downtown condo, looking out over the city I had slowly conquered one property at a time. From this height, I could actually see the roof of my first duplex in the distance, a humble beginning that had led to an empire of 5 properties and controlling interest in a financial firm. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. "Whatever happens tonight, remember that your worth isn't determined by their reaction. You've built something remarkable." I smiled at his prescience. He had become more than a mentor. He was a friend who understood the complex emotions driving my journey. Sophia emerged from the bedroom in her robe, hair tousled from sleep. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and rested her chin on my shoulder. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. "Not about seeing them," I replied, "but about how much to reveal. Part of me wants to walk in wearing success like armor. Another part thinks that would just perpetuate the same value system I've been fighting against." She considered this. "What feels most authentic to you? Not what would impress them or prove something, but what represents the person you've become." It was the right question, as Sophia's questions often were. After reflection, I decided on a middle path. I would arrive in my Tesla, a recent purchase that represented financial success without being ostentatious, but dressed simply in jeans and a button-down shirt. I would answer questions about my career honestly, but wouldn't lead with financial details unless asked directly. Most importantly, I would bring the documentation proving my ownership stake in Midwest Financial Partners, not to gloat, but because they deserved to know who was managing their retirement funds. The day passed in a blur of final preparations and last-minute work tasks. As evening approached, Sophia helped me select an outfit that struck the right balance, professional but not showy, successful but not boastful. "You look handsome," she said, straightening my collar, "and centered. That's the most important thing." "You're not coming?" I asked, though we had discussed this already. "This first meeting should be just family," she replied gently. "We'll have plenty of time for reconnections later, assuming tonight goes well. And if it doesn't, then we continue building our life on our terms," she said simply. "Your happiness isn't contingent on their approval anymore." I kissed her goodbye, drawing strength from her unwavering support, and headed to the garage where my Tesla waited. The drive to my parents' house took 30 minutes, enough time to cycle through anxiety, determination, hope, and resignation several times over. As I turned onto the familiar street, memories flooded back. Riding bikes with neighborhood kids, waiting for the school bus at the corner, bringing home report cards with a mix of pride and trepidation. This place had shaped me for better and worse. My parents' house looked smaller than I remembered, the once immaculate landscaping showing signs of neglect. My father's early retirement had apparently affected their maintenance budget. I parked the Tesla at the curb rather than in the driveway, visible but not intrusive. Before exiting the car, I checked my portfolio app one last time, a ritual that had become a source of grounding. 5 properties, all performing well. A controlling interest in Midwest Financial Partners, which was now implementing the changes I had directed. A net worth that had grown exponentially in 4 years through strategic investments and calculated risks. I wasn't a target cashier anymore, but more importantly, I wasn't defined by my job title or income bracket. I had become someone who created value, who built systems, who saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. With that thought firmly in mind, I grabbed the folder containing the Midwest financial documentation, took a deep breath, and walked up the familiar path to my childhood home. Amelia opened the door before I could ring the bell. "You came," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I said I would," I replied, accepting her quick hug. "They're in the living room," she whispered. "Dad's nervous, though he'd never admit it. Mom's been cleaning all day." I nodded, appreciating the intel. "How much do they know?" "Only that you wanted to reconnect," she assured me. I kept my promise. We walked together to the living room where my parents sat stiffly on the couch, like they were posing for a formal portrait. They looked older than I expected. My father's hair now completely gray, my mother's face lined with new wrinkles around her eyes and mouth. "Augustus," my mother said, rising quickly. Her voice caught as she took a step toward me, arms half raised for a hug but hesitating, as if unsure of her welcome. I closed the distance between us, allowing the embrace. "Hi, Mom." She held on longer than was comfortable, her body trembling slightly. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You look well," she managed. My father remained seated, his posture rigid. "Son," he acknowledged with a nod. "Dad," I replied, maintaining eye contact but not approaching for physical contact he clearly wasn't ready for. An awkward silence fell over the room. 4 years of absence created a chasm that pleasantries couldn't bridge. Amelia jumped in. "I'll check on dinner. Why don't you all catch up?" She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me alone with my parents. "Please sit," my mother urged, gesturing to an armchair. "Can I get you something to drink? Water, coffee?" "Water would be fine," I said, taking the offered seat. As she hurried to the kitchen, I was left facing my father across the coffee table. He cleared his throat. "That's a Tesla outside." "Yes," I confirmed. "Rental?" he asked, his tone suggesting he couldn't imagine any other explanation. "No, it's mine," I replied evenly. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he said nothing more, as my mother returned with a glass of water. So she began, her voice artificially bright. "Amelia mentioned, you're engaged to Sophia." "Yes," I confirmed, grateful for the neutral topic. "She's completed her residency now. She's working at Riverside Community Health Center as a pediatrician." "That's wonderful," my mother said. "We always thought she was lovely." I bit back, a reminder that their last interaction with Sophia had been anything but appreciative. Instead, I simply nodded. "And what about you?" my father asked, his gaze direct and assessing. "Still in retail?" The question was exactly what I'd expected, the same dismissive tone, the same assumptions. But unlike 4 years ago, it didn't trigger shame or defensiveness. "No," I replied calmly. "I left Target about 2 years ago. I'm self-employed now." "Doing what exactly?" he pressed. "Real estate investment and property management primarily," I said. "I also have interests in financial services." My father's expression remained skeptical. "Real estate can be risky without substantial capital and experience." "It can be," I agreed. "But with the right strategy and systems, it's also incredibly rewarding." My mother, sensing tension, intervened. "We've missed you, Augustus. These past 4 years, they've been difficult, not knowing how you were doing, where you were living." "I needed space," I explained, "to figure out who I am without the pressure of living up to expectations that never felt like my own." "We only wanted what was best for you," she insisted. You wanted what you thought was best, I corrected gently, based on your definition of success, not mine. My father shifted uncomfortably. Parents try to guide their children based on life experience. Sometimes we're too rigid in our thinking. Coming from him, this was tantamount to an apology. I acknowledged it with a slight nod. "Dinner's ready," Amelia announced, providing a timely interruption. We moved to the dining room where the table was set with the good china. The same dishes from that disastrous dinner 4 years earlier. My mother had prepared pot roast mashed potatoes and green beans, comfort food that spoke of her desire to return to familiar ground. Conversation during the meal remained cautious. We discussed safe topics: Amelia's recent promotion changes in the neighborhood, a cousin's new baby. My parents asked careful questions about my life, clearly trying to fill in the 4-year gap without triggering my departure. As we finished dessert, my mother's apple pie, another callback to that fateful night, I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. "I didn't come back just to make small talk," I said, setting down my fork. "I came because I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what happened and where we go from here." The table fell silent. My father's jaw tightened, but he nodded for me to continue. "4 years ago, I sat at this table and was told that my value as a person was determined by my job title and income," I said, keeping my voice even, "that I had nothing to offer someone like Sophia because I was just a target cashier." "Augustus, your father was concerned about practical matters," my mother began. I held up a hand. "Please let me finish." Those words hurt deeply, but they also motivated me. Not to prove you wrong initially, but to prove to myself that I could succeed on my own terms. I turned to face my father directly. When I left that night, I cut contact not out of spite, but because I needed to find my own path without constant judgment. And I did. "Clearly," my father said, glancing toward the window where my Tesla was visible. "You seem to have done well for yourself." "I have," I acknowledged. "But success isn't just about material things. It's about building a life that aligns with your values and utilizing your unique strengths." I reached for the folder I had brought and placed it on the table. "There's something else you should know. About 2 years ago, I learned that your retirement fund was being poorly managed by Midwest financial partners. High fees, underperforming investments, outdated strategies." My father's expression sharpened. "How would you know about our investments?" "Because I researched them," I replied. And then I did something about it. I opened the folder and slid several documents across the table. My investment group acquired a controlling interest in Midwest Financial Partners 18 months ago. We've been implementing changes to improve returns and reduce fees for all clients, including you. My father stared at the document's confusion, giving way to disbelief as he processed what I was saying. "You own the company that manages our retirement." 60% of it, yes, I confirmed. "Your monthly statements have shown improved performance. I imagine, though, you wouldn't have known why." My mother looked between us, clearly struggling to reconcile the son who had left 4 years ago with the businessman sitting before her now. "But how? When did you learn about investments and business acquisitions?" "I learned by doing," I explained. "By finding mentors who believed in me. By recognizing that my people skills and problem-solving abilities were actually valuable business assets, not just nice personal qualities." I returned my attention to my father. "I didn't buy the company to control your finances or as some form of revenge. I did it because I saw a problem I could fix, a business I could improve, and yes, a way to protect your retirement even if we never spoke again." The silence that followed was profound. My father stared at the documents, his hands slightly trembling. Whether from shock or emotion, I couldn't tell. Finally, he looked up, his eyes meeting mine with an expression I had never seen before. Not approval or pride, but something more valuable: respect. "I underestimated you," he said quietly. "Completely and thoroughly underestimated you." It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But from my father, it was an extraordinary admission. "Yes," I agreed simply. "You did." My father's admission hung in the air between us, a moment of truth that couldn't be taken back or dismissed. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, he was seeing me clearly, not as a disappointing son who had failed to follow his prescribed path, but as a capable adult who had forged his own successful way in the world. These returns, he said, examining the financial statements more closely, they're significantly better than what we were seeing before. We implemented modern investment strategies and cut unnecessary fees, I explained. The previous management was stuck in outdated methods that weren't serving clients well. My mother reached across the table to touch my hand. Augustus, I don't understand all of this financial talk, but it sounds like you've become quite successful. I have 5 properties now, I said, allowing myself a moment of straightforward pride. The duplex was just the beginning. Each investment created equity and cash flow that funded the next. It's not just about owning real estate. It's about creating systems that generate passive income. 5 properties, my father repeated, struggling to reconcile this reality with his perception of me. And you learned all this while working at Target. I learned by seeking out knowledge and mentors instead of waiting for approval, I replied. Dr. Chen, Sophia's mentor, took me under his wing. He showed me that real estate could be a path to financial independence. From there, I studied networked and took calculated risks. My sister Amelia, who had been quietly observing this exchange, finally spoke up. I've seen his properties, Dad. They're impressive. Augustus has a talent for seeing potential where others don't. My father nodded slowly, processing this information. And this is what you meant by being self-employed, managing these properties. That and other investments, I confirmed. My time is my own now. I can focus on opportunities that align with my values and strengths. Like buying our investment firm, my father said, a hint of his old skepticism returning. That was a business decision that happened to have personal implications, I clarified. The firm was underperforming and undervalued. We saw an opportunity to improve operations and returns for all clients. My father studied my face, searching for signs of vindictiveness or triumph. Finding none, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. It must have been satisfying, he said, knowing you controlled our financial future after what I said to you. I considered deflecting with a joke or platitude, but decided honesty was more important. There was a certain symmetry to it, I admitted, but it wasn't about revenge. It was about proving something to myself, not to you. My mother, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly stood up with tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Augustus. We should have supported your choices. We should have seen your potential. Mom, it's okay. I began, uncomfortable with her display of emotion. No, it's not, she insisted. Your father and I were wrong. We were so focused on traditional paths to success that we couldn't see you were creating your own. My father cleared his throat, clearly struggling with his own emotions. Your mother's right, he said gruffly. I was wrong about you, son. Completely wrong. The admission I had once desperately wanted now felt almost unnecessary. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had proven my worth to myself. Still hearing those words lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. But why come back now? My father asked. Why not earlier? Or never? It was a fair question. I needed to be sure I was reconnecting from a position of strength, not need, I explained. And honestly, I needed time to work through my own anger and resentment. Are you still angry? My mother asked hesitantly. No, I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. Not anymore. The past 4 years have been about building something positive, not dwelling on negative emotions. And you've built something remarkable, Amelia said, with genuine admiration, not just financially, but personally. You seem centered in a way you never were before. I smiled at my sister's perceptiveness. That's largely thanks to Sophia. And therapy, I added, watching my father's eyebrows rise at the mention of mental health support. Processing what happened that night, and throughout my childhood, was essential to moving forward. My father shifted uncomfortably but nodded. I suppose we all have blind spots when it comes to how we affect others. Coming from him, this was a profound acknowledgement. I have something else to show you, I said, pulling out my phone and opening my photo gallery. I passed it to my mother, displaying pictures of the various properties I had acquired and renovated. Oh my, she exclaimed, swiping through the images. These are beautiful, Augustus. You did all this yourself. I did the renovations on the first 2 properties, mostly myself, I explained. As the business grew, I built a team of contractors and property managers. That's another lesson I learned. Success isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about creating systems and finding the right people. My mother passed the phone to my father, who examined each photo with careful attention. "You have a good eye," he admitted. "These improvements add significant value." "That's the whole point," I agreed. Find properties with potential, improve them strategically, and either hold for cash flow or sell for profit. "And now you're getting married," my mother said, bringing the conversation back to personal matters. "When is the wedding?" "Next spring," I replied. "Nothing extravagant, just close friends and family at a small venue downtown." "Family," my mother repeated, her voice hopeful. "Does that include us?" The question hung in the air, representing so much more than a wedding invitation. It was about whether I was willing to rebuild our relationship to allow them back into my life after 4 years of silence. "I'd like it to," I said honestly, "but things need to be different. I'm not the same person who left that night, and our relationship can't be the same either." "What do you need from us?" my father asked, surprising me with his directness. "Respect," I replied without hesitation. Not approval or agreement with all my choices, but basic respect for my autonomy and abilities. He nodded slowly. "I think you've more than earned that." My mother wiped away fresh tears. "We've missed so much of your life, Augustus. Your first property, your business growth, your engagement. I don't want to miss any more." "Neither do I admitted. "Despite everything, you're still my parents. I'd like Sophia and I to have you in our lives and someday in our children's lives." "Grandchildren," my mother whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. Eventually, I clarified. "We're focusing on our careers first." My father, who had been examining the investment documents again, looked up with an expression of genuine curiosity. "I'd like to understand more about how you built all this." "Not to judge," he added quickly, "but to learn." "Clearly your approach has merit," I failed to recognize. It was perhaps the most meaningful olive branch he could have offered, an acknowledgement that he had something to learn from me, a reversal of our previous dynamic. "I'd be happy to explain," I said. "Maybe we could meet for lunch next week. There's a restaurant near my downtown property I think you'd enjoy." I'd like that he agreed. As the evening drew to a close, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with proving my father wrong and everything to do with personal growth. The journey from target cashier to successful investor hadn't been about revenge or validation. It had been about discovering my own definition of success. Standing on my parents' porch as we said our goodbyes, my father awkwardly extended his hand. I took it, then pulled him into a brief hug instead. "I'm proud of you, son," he said gruffly as we separated. "Not because of the Tesla or the properties, but because you had the courage to forge your own path." "Thank you," I replied, recognizing the significance of words I had once desperately craved. "That means a lot, even if I no longer need to hear it." As I drove home to Sophia, who was waiting eagerly to hear how the evening had gone, I reflected on the lessons of the past 4 years. Success isn't measured by job titles or income brackets, but by living authentically and utilizing your unique strengths. Validation from others is fleeting. Self-belief is enduring. And sometimes, the greatest act of self-respect is walking away from toxic situations until you can return on your own terms. Most importantly, I had learned that true wealth isn't counted in properties or bank balances, but in personal growth, meaningful relationships, and the freedom to define success for yourself. 4 years ago, I left my parents' home as just a target cashier in their eyes. Tonight, I returned as a successful investor and businessman by any measure. But the real transformation wasn't in my financial status. It was in recognizing that my worth had never been determined by either role. As I pull into the garage of our downtown condo, I can't help but smile at the journey life has taken me on. From being looked down upon as just a cashier to building a real estate empire and securing my parents' retirement, I've come full circle. What's your story of proving someone wrong who underestimated you? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my journey resonated with you. Remember, success is the best response to those who doubt you, but healing comes from within. Thank you for listening, and I hope my story inspires you to create your own path to success, however you define it.